What's going on, and welcome back to episode 4 of this little mini series on all the mods 10. I'm Captain Jack. We are here at the Star Forge, and in this episode, we're going to be looking through level 2 of this facility, mainly centered around applied energistics. So let's go down and let's get started. We're going to go to my teleportation room, and we are going to enter level 2. Now, I'm kind of going to ignore the fact that refined storage exists because applied energistics is vastly superior. And we're just going to assume that you're using it. So, one of the first things you're definitely going to want to do is to use applied energistics to automate all the components of AE2's mod. One of the primary things you'll want to focus on is automating these processors. So, logic, calculation are the two most used processors. And then you have engineering, concurrent, accumulation, and so on and so forth. You can kind of see that I have a little over 1,000 of each of these, and I have 1.2 million logic and 1.3 calculation. And there's definitely a reason for that. So if you're in the early stages of your playthrough and you're not really sure what comes at the end game, I just want to point out that the improbable probability drive is one of the hardest items to craft in as you work towards the ATM star, and it's because these 256 million portable item cells are absolutely horrendous. They're huge. It's a huge craft, and you're going to need hundreds of thousands of processors for them. These 256 million mega storage part. This is just no joke, right? This is quite a bit. And let's see if I can do. Uh, let's see how much this costs. So yeah, 8,000 of these. Where's the process? 17,000 of these. These are large crafts, and you don't want to be just sitting there waiting for your circuit slicers or your inscribers to just churn these things out. You do want to have a stockpile of these, and I'll show you kind of how I took care of that. But right before we get into that, there's not really too much going on here. These are requesters, ME requesters, great items, and these are all my crafters. And kind of what I have here is the ability to just peek in here. I'm using extended export buses to export all of the essences that I want broken down into their components. And my mystical agriculture farm is kind of feeding all these here. So I just have, it's a little bit overkill. I didn't need quite this many. And again, I didn't use soul surging until a little bit later, so I probably needed even less. But this is where all of my mystical agriculture stuff is being handled. And anything else that I want to keep in its essence form is just stored inside of my system. ME requesters are absolutely fantastic. I haven't started using them in my new build. But what I basically did was I was calling for just to keep a stockpile, of all these different things inside of my system. One of the first things that I did was made all these, frame blocks here, so that when I was building, I would always have my building materials. So, I always have 500 quartz. You can see this is just, it always has 1,000 prediction matrices in there. And this is where those 1,000 quantities are coming from. If I can find it, here's more frame blocks there. I have my Fluix Smart Cable, just a way to keep this stuff in stock so that you don't have to manually request something. Here's where I have all my processors, and I started out at 10 or 15, and then I kept adding zeros to things. So I just wanted 1,000 of everything in case I did need to, auto craft some of these on demand if I didn't have them in my system. There's also an ME requester terminal that I have up here that will basically show you every single one of your requesters so that you can have access to them remotely. So really good quality of life thing if you're using the ME requesters. I talked about this briefly in the last episode, but I have a relatively small controller here. And yeah, I basically can forge all of my stars with the amount of channels that you see here. Just a bunch of these at wireless connectors, which are huge. And because I don't think that I've done this yet, let me go ahead and look at this. We're going to look at star. Oops. And we're just going to craft 2,000 of these, right? So I can craft 2,000 stars on demand, and it's just going to churn up. This is obviously probably the biggest craft that you can do. There's a lot going on here, but it can do it, and it can craft them up. So yeah, this is not using too many channels. So if you're a little bit scared of applied energistics and worrying about running out of channels, again, the wireless block's really great, and you're not going to have a problem if you do it properly. All right, so in here, this is where I initially set up all of my crafting storage, and this is really not used at all for anything. It's because I have the large multi-block from Advanced AE. This is not something that I would recommend that you look towards building as a permanent part of your base because the multi-block is so powerful. So yeah, this is not really used at all. I'll show you the multi-block in a second. And here's where I have all of my circuit slicers and crystal assemblers. I know we talked about this in the last episode, but I would definitely look to removing your reliance on inscribers as quickly as possible. They're essentially not necessary. It takes a little bit more work to get to circuit slicers, but I promise you it's much more worth it. What I have here is, I believe it's only 3 circuit slicers. I could have done a fourth one, but I didn't really need to. I have a full block pattern provider adjacent to 3 of these. If you're going to use these, just make sure you select the output and enable that so it goes in and out. So I don't need any import buses on here. The pattern provider pushes it in and the machine automatically pushes it right back out into the pattern provider, back into the system. But yeah, this is where I have all of my auto crafting processors. If you attach more, more than one block adjacent and then set up blocking mode. Actually, I didn't even set up blocking mode. It's fine. Looks like it works fine. You can basically craft a lot faster. So yeah, I kind of was limited by my own self-imposed space restrictions in here. Definitely maybe not the best way to do it. I'll show you a little bit simpler setup in a second. And these are my only 2 crystal assemblers that were basically handling a lot of the more advanced items in here. So all the extended blocks and stuff like that. Honestly, this was fine. It worked okay. Again, maybe not the fastest method to do all this stuff. That side's pretty much the same. But for these guys here, these reaction chambers, use the infinite lava cell. You really don't need the infinite lava cell at all. This does not use a heavy amount of lava. But yeah, so you need one for lava, one for water, and then one for this quantum infusion. And so what I did here was basically I have these quantum infused dust being auto crafted and exported into the back of this. So it's always full of this stuff. So if I take this out, the system's going to automatically craft and jam some more in there. And then it's going to filter up the fluid into this reaction chamber. So this is not, I don't have this set up to auto craft. I just kind of found that this was the easiest way to handle it. And I didn't really care if this whole thing was full. So you see it just crafted a little bit. In my second playthrough, I pushed for quantum infusion very, very, very early. I have basically the exact same setup. And you want this because you need quantum alloy plate and quantum alloy, and that is so that you can make the multi-blocks from advanced AE. All right, so here they are. The quantum computer structure over here, and the assembler matrix over here. Both of these blocks are 7x7. I think you can make it a little bit bigger, maybe 9x9, I'm not sure, I forget. I think you can do 9x9. I do have a tutorial on this block here. That was not added to the pack when I made this tutorial, but this is pretty straightforward. So the quantum computer, right here is also a huge craft. And you can see how it says hold G to open guide. You might need to keybind that, but if you do hold G, it will basically tell you exactly how to build this. So like the multi-threader and the whatever it was, there's another block that you can only have one of. It will essentially tell you how to build this. Here it says 7x7 is the max size. But yeah, definitely use this, hover over, mouse over to open the guide. This is also a very large craft, but if you have mystical agriculture set up and churning out some basic ingredients like redstone and so on and so forth, this is actually fairly attainable, and you don't even need the highest tier of crafting block to make this. The reason I'd suggest pushing for this pretty early on is because it simply is so incredibly fast, and it is light years faster than any of the just mega crafting units that you could possibly buy. You can see that it has 8,784 coprocessors, which is why it is so fast. And it's got whatever 3G of storage is. I've never actually been able to outuse the storage space on one of these things. But the benefit is that it can handle basically almost an infinite amount of processes. It's not infinite, but you know what I mean. You just need this one block. It takes up just one channel, and all of your crafting goes through here, and it's very, very fast. The assembler matrix is very straightforward. You can hit G to hover over to see the crafting components and what goes inside of it. These are all my patterns. You are going to need a lot of pattern space. I probably used about half of the space in here, and you can kind of customize that based on the blocks that you put inside here. But one of the things that you're going to find is that it's kind of hard to move all of your patterns from your old system. If you did have any of the individual pattern providers, which I used to over here, one of the best ways that I could recommend is basically just taking a storage bus and slapping it onto the side of this block here, and then just breaking all of your pattern providers, and then just shifts clicking it right into your system. And it's going to automatically by default put it into the assembler matrix if you have the priority set to very high. So that's definitely a tip that I would recommend instead of like filling backpacks or walking back and forth, 87 times. So the last thing we're going to look at in the Star Forge here, before we go to the new Star Forge, is what I have going on here, and it is a giant hot mess. I alluded to this in a previous episode, but this is basically where I had all of my automation happening. I actually was producing so many of these that my redstone couldn't keep up, which is why all of this is off right now and it's not, continuing to make millions more. But essentially, I had, a spot to automatically produce calculation logic and then engineering ones here, but I switched it to logic because I was using so many of them. Um, but this was essentially just using a standalone resource generation here, which again, this is a complete disaster. I'm gonna build this a lot better in my next playthrough. But this is kind of where I was basically churning out those processors. So I have silicon bees producing all the silicon I need. I have gold bees and I have Certus quartz bees. They're not called that; they're called spatial bees. This is creating Certus quartz, and I should have had a redstone. So if you do this, definitely have something in redstone. But basically, what's happening is I'm taking all of the combs that are coming from these gold bees. You can see it's happening there. They're all getting fried up inside of here, and then they're getting cooked in here, and then they're getting turned into blocks in here, and then they're getting turned into blocks or logic circuits here. And then I believe this is such a mess. I don't even know what's happening here. I think one of these there's modular routers around here somewhere. Yeah, they're pulling from here and sending into here. So somewhere, and I believe it's this interface right here. Let me get some redstone. Let me see if this will start working. Here we go. We're gonna drop that right there. Yeah, and there they go. Okay. Over here with these spatial bees, they create two byproducts. So spatial comb, they're creating Certus quartz dust and Certus quartz crystals. So you kind of got a two for one there. That's super nice. So I basically had the Certus quartz dust go into a drawer, and I'm going to save that. Holy crap! And then yeah, this is all a big mess. But you can obviously see that it works. And look, you can't even see the mess because I hit it all. Yay. So that's pretty much all that's going on in this level. You'll kind of notice that the deeper you go into this forge, the more advanced into the pack that I got. And this is basically the level underneath my lobby. And that's the first thing I worked on, right? You just basically want to have the ability to automate absolutely everything and to start stockpiling those patterns. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and switch servers. We're going to go over to the newest playthrough and see what's going on over there. All right, here we are, current playthrough, and everything has been completely stripped from this little barn except for the wind generators. So let's go and check out what is happening in the new Star Forge. All right, so there is still quite a bit of work to be done aesthetic wise, but I've moved a lot of machines. Didn't do anything in here except for add this, which seems like a pretty wild thing to do this early. Essentially, you just need a couple energy pylons. You put a piece of glass next to it. You set it as either input or output. And kind of what I have my power doing is oh, that little thing over there is just getting it into there. I have the flux plug on an import network, which I don't even know where it is. Here it is. Flux point. Yeah. So this is my power in. It's getting put into this giant tier 8 energy cube, which is the highest it can go. It will essentially never be filled. And then I basically have it coming out and into this flux plug, which is providing, power to my, channel one ender cell here and wherever else I have my flux network. So I have all of my power and that's how it will work moving forward. I love Draconic Evolution. I love this multi-block. I did change the color of it. You can do that with these buttons down here. But yeah, I have all my power filtering through here. So I'm building up a giant buffer and I will basically be able to probably make all the antimatter I need just by using a bunch of the nitrothermal generators and not really too much more. That obviously requires quite a few awakened draconian blocks to build, and I'll show you how I did that. All right, so if you take this elevator down, we get to my workshop. And this is kind of the same concept as the Star Forge. It's a lot more open, which makes it a lot easier to work here. You can see that I've gotten my whatever this is, apotheosis enchanting going up. I did make a bunch of infused dragon breath. One thing I do want to point out is that if I can find it here, apothic enchanting, there are like these milestones here, and it will tell you exactly how to get there, right? So if you want to be able to infuse Dragon's Breath, I used to go to the wiki all the time. It will tell you 4 Echoing Skulk shelves, 4 Soul Touched, and 6 Geode Encased bookshelves, which I don't really see anybody online advising the Geode Encased ones from older videos. But this, yeah, this setup here, I was able to infuse Dragon's Breath. I was also making budding amethyst with that, so that's one of the things that you can use. That's a different setup. So yeah, apotheosis enchanting, got a bunch of that stuff set up. We'll need more of that later on for sure. This is where I did all my Draconic Evolution Fusion crafting. And this really wasn't super hard to get started with because I used seeds. So here, the main reason why I wanted to use these was to get these wireless access points. I love these blocks, right? So I automated it with modular routers, and this will go ahead and start crafting, I think. Wait, why is this stuck? Oh, it's because it made it already. I was trying to do something different. Wireless energy, maybe it's a relay. Sure, we'll craft up some relays. Let's see what happens. 10, there we go. So yeah, this is modular routers. Basically, I have my pattern provider set up to a Skystone chest. Both these modular routers are fighting for items, and they're just going to put them in all of those places there. I get a redstone clock to initiate the craft, and then it's going to just get sucked right back down. And this is essentially a very easy way to automate Draconic Evolution. And these things are really, really great. I love them. You'll see how I use them in a second. Actually, I'll just show you now. Right, so I got rid of the little things that were providing power to all of these growth accelerators here and replaced them with the energy IO crystal outputting to a wireless energy crystal. And then you take this with a crystal binder and link it up to all your thingies here. So it makes looking into these blocks and seeing where you do or do not have seeds a lot easier, actually. So yeah, these things are absolutely amazing. I love them and they look awesome. Over here, I moved my Ars Nouveau little enchanting apparatus setup. This is not going to stay here. This is going to get its own area probably. But what I needed this for was to make skulk shriekers, right? Because when you are using industrial foregoing souls, yep, sorry, took me a second there. You're going to need a lot of these skulk shriekers, and I haven't automated it yet. I basically just need to, dial this into my system, but I got as many as I needed for now, anyways. But yeah, this is going to be a big part of this pack. Over here, this is where I initially had my molecular assembler chambers, along with the pattern providers to do all of my auto crafting, but I have since moved it into the multi-block. I started bees, and if you put a little oak fence above a blocked in area, the bees don't escape when you go to like feed them blocks. So yeah, that's what that is. This is my only setup for Powa. Basically, I think this is the only recipe that I really need until I get to like the all-the-modium alloy ingots way later on, and I haven't even been using it. But yeah, that's what that was for. And now let's go ahead and take a look down here. Okay. So I'm going to use more channels this time because I basically have a 49 area chunk area loaded. So I did build my controller a little bit bigger. We kind of knew that was going on. We saw this down here, but since I have added this quantum computer structure, and this one is a 9x9. Like I guess you can build it bigger in the newer versions of the pack, but this is my quantum computer. That's still making those. I thought it was stuck. Yeah, so already got that going for me. Over here, I got my patterns. Not very full yet, but I got a bunch in here. I already got this. Do I have a 256? Yes, I do have a 256 million queued up. Have not automated processors yet though, so I'll be getting to that. Now up here, this is my control room, and I have used drawers a lot more heavily. So let me go ahead and grab, let me see, this linking tool. Okay, if you do that, I have a very large area linked, and you can see where I have all of my storage drawers up there, and that is where I am storing all of my bulk items. So I don't really need a lot of these. Again, we talked about this in a prior episode. This is going to be mainly just to store different types of items, and some of them, as they build up, I'm going to have to move them, like the 71,000 of those fertilizers. I just need to throw those in the garbage. And then extended IO port. This gets a little bit laggy actually with more than 2 accelerator cards. Maybe it's just my server. I'm not really sure. But that's where all my AE2 storage is so far. Got this mess over here. I haven't made the library yet. Here's my Mason table. Got access to the mining dim there. This is like my main workstation here. There's nothing in there. That's where all my mystical agriculture is. Here's my furnace. It's not roped into the system yet. And I got my cell workbench. So yeah, this is my little workshop. Mark II up here. Inside here in the center of this little cube, I got a bunch of nonsense going on. Oh, this was just a hot mess. This was annoying. I let the mob farm go too long before I moved into this new base, and I ended up having all these compressed ender pearls and a whole bunch of different blocks that I need to handle. So that I'm just going to delete. Um, I don't even know where it is, but somewhere I have Flux Networks controller. It does not provide power quite as quickly as a player transmitter from the power mod, and you need this dimensional binding card. You need to basically make a binding card and slap an Ender Pearl or Ender Man with it, and then you need to like hit a zombie with some other block to even start the craft. But this player transmitter is going to transmit energy a lot faster, and it will allow you to use the time wand up to the maximum like acceleration without having to like reload on power. Here it is right here. Flux controller. Can barely see it. Got my armory cabinet in here. I hit it this time because it's just got so many slots it never end up filling up. And here's my storage controller, which is, as you already saw, controlling all of my storage throughout the perimeter of my base. And what I'm going to most likely end up doing is, and I believe the wand of teleportation is in this pack from Ender IO. I'm probably going to make anchors throughout here so I can get to things quicker. But the glass allows me to kind of see anywhere I'm standing which part of this is in, and I'm kind of getting used to saying, this is in north, south, east, west, so on and so forth. The block shape is definitely harder to find stuff in because everything looks the same. We'll do bees last. This is my simulation chamber setup. I don't really particularly like it, but this is how I have it done. You can see it when I mouse over stuff if there is or isn't a prediction in there or a data model in there, and most of these are actually empty, but here's the ones, I got withers going. Evokers for emeralds. My warden, need a lot of skulk. The lunar monstrosities. You do need that somewhere down the line for something that's from the starlight dimension mod. Go through the portal. So yeah, not a lot of these are up and running. Got a blaze one up and running. And then just so you can see what's kind of going on back here is I have my soul searching, like I told you I was going to be working towards. I have modular routers handling the input and output of basically everything here. And I think this is almost out. Yeah, this is just taking prediction matrices and distributing them throughout all these guys over here. And then my loop fabricators are soul searched. So that's all just getting dumped into this right here. Over here is where I have all of my applied energistics automation, and you can kind of see everything. It's a little bit cleaner. Maybe it's not as textured. It doesn't look, quite as nice as the other one. But yeah, this is, circuit slicers, crystal assemblers. I have more this time. I learned my lesson. And over here, I basically did the exact same thing. I have the quantum infused dust going into this. So I have this completely set up, and that's how I made those two multi-blocks. I just rushed towards this. In the back here, just so you can see kind of how I did it, I have it all neatly organized. I have two interfaces with warden souls getting pumped out, the top and the bottom. And then I just have all of my pipes nice and neatly connecting to these pattern providers. So pretty simple. Again, look at this. You can use this trick. look how terrible this looks from the bottom, but it looks great inside, and that's what matters. So originally I just had a sink hooked up to a matter condenser to get some of these singularities, but I since have switched to this method. If you're not sure that, how to make these as fast as possible, you can see that I'm making like 2 a second, 3 a second, whatever it is. And I have 1.3 billion singularities. You need these a lot for advanced AE, so it's definitely something you should have. Basically, I just have an IO port with my infinity water cell here, and then I have a storage bus just kind of keeping it stored in the matter condenser. So it's just infinitely churning water through the system. It's accelerated, it's extended. What I did find was that I needed a dense energy cell on top of this is just like its own network here. This would not run properly without extra storage, but I have all of the singularities that I could basically ever want, and I'll just take this down and plop this up into my storage soon. So up here is my really boring power generation. I did make some more thermal generators. That's what's powering this whole thing so far, and this is where you can see that channel. I have CJ input, and this is putting that into the giant orb up there, and then it's getting pushed out through another network. So I have an input network, and I have an output network. And over here, and actually in the four corners of the space, this is where I'm going to build my mob farms. So this mob farm is dedicated to, I forget what, mob slaughter. So this is making pink slime. It's making liquid meat, which I'm not going to use in this episode. And then over here, I have this one creating all of my essence. And I am just dumping all of the drops, right? I obviously don't want, 4 million pounds of pig meat. But this is just making mob essence because I'm going to need mob essence. for some of my dissolution chamber recipes, which are right here. So I have 2 per recipe. So the pattern providers here are all using latex and they are soul surged, right? Here's the back. Again, actually, this is a little bit messy, but it is what it is. Oh, it's because I have this whole other setup going on right here. But yeah, everything's soul surge. So these are much faster. I have tier fours. This is what you push for when you're building up this mod. You want to get these add-on efficiency fours as quickly as possible, and then soul surge it because these can be pretty slow. But yeah, here's my recipes for this, and then I got my pink slime from my mob farm, and then I can make supreme machine frames with ether gas, and we'll see my little pet wither up there soon. Yeah, so this is where I can make all of these patterns. If for some reason you're having a hard time crafting these because it's like using the liquid experience inside of the dissolution chamber just to make experience bottles, definitely the workaround is to just make the recipe with whatever XP fluid you have built into it. So you're going to go like this. You're going to wait till it says like essence or whatever it is. Click that and then program it exactly as is. And it's going to just put in the amount needed. This is actually going in last because it's, in the last space down here. So it won't get consumed before all these items are inside of there. And that will make your craft work just fine. These are my fluid extractors. This is making latex for me. I have an advanced block placer being fed by something, must be below there. It's just pushing oak logs. It's crafting them as needed. And the space, I'll click on it so you can see, it's putting those logs all right there, right? So I'm just trying to fit everything on my little wall here. Advanced block placer from Just Liar Things is really good for this. Some of this stuff is not used. I did create a few buckets of unstable portal fluid because I need that for my soul surging. I don't actually think that I'll need to refill this. So I am choosing right now to not automate this. I don't really think there's a need for it. Again, just because the initial crafts, while they take like one whole bucket each, every other craft just doesn't use as much unstable portal fluid. So this should be fine for the whole playthrough. Over here, I got the same situation. All my mechanism stuff. When you do this, you can have this one pattern provider send recipes to both machines so you can produce stuff twice as fast. Definitely go ahead and use the enriched version of this stuff. You're going to use a lot less redstone inside of these machines. Make sure you automate them with input output. So I essentially everything's being handled by both standalone blocks, right? So the output is being handled by this, and the input is being handled by this, and no other channels are needed. So I got infusing, 2 infusing, 3 infused, 4. Okay, this one's not set up actually because I need infused coal or whatever it is. But yeah, there's diamond. Yeah, enriched diamond, enriched obsidian, some recipes. Yeah, I don't have too many recipes in here yet. Got some crushed versions of this stuff. I needed that for advanced AE. And then I have a compressing, which I don't even think I needed that. And then my sawmill over there. I don't even know why I was using that, but this is what it looks like from the back. Everything is, again, soul surged. I wanted things to be faster. So probably with this setup, I will be producing things just as fast or faster as my old setup on the orange Starforge server base. So yeah, this is kind of how it looks, and it's all just these little wireless access points, and I have plenty of channels to do whatever I need to do. Over here, I got my crafters. We just talked about that. Got the same exact thing going on. I got 12 of them, should be plenty. Bunch of stuff I was using for my mob farm. Got my bee squisher ready here. This should be fine to handle every bee, every comb in the whole pack. My incubator, my breeder. I got all of my gene indexes here. So what I'm looking for is I'm trying to, oh, these have been here the whole time actually. I'm trying to get the time bee as quickly as possible. Now I've already crafted the time wand, and the time fluid actually it lasts a really long time, but I don't want to keep making that ever. So I'm going to push for the time bee, and it needs these spawn eggs. And it looks like I probably have a few 100% here. Yep, there's a netherite 100%, celestial gem. Okay, Draconic. I definitely need that. So yeah, I'm working towards this, and I have, yeah, 1 eclipse alloy. So I need a few more. I'm almost there though. Just these couple guys on top. So yeah, this is like all you need really. Upgrade to heated centrifuges as quickly as possible. Don't forget to put an upgrade productivity omega inside of here. It's going to actually make these process a whole lot faster than just 4 speedier upgrades. And then let me just take this out. Right now, I just have basically one comb block and a fuzzy bus, and it's pushing everything. I'm not sure if that's going to turn into a problem if I need full honeycomb blocks in the future, but for right now, it's a super easy way to process every single comb that's coming through your system. I am using this here again. So there we go. Great way to power it. Super easy. You can power literally up to 64 machines with this one thing wirelessly. It's just solid gold. This is my favorite thing about Draconic Evolution. So yeah, this is what's going on here. A block of redstone. Oh, for my gene indexer. Yeah, your gene indexer is going to need a redstone signal in order to combine like the 1% with the 2% to make 3%, so on and so forth. So if it's not working properly, you don't have a block of redstone on it or a lever or something. And then yeah, everything is soul surged here. So the heated centrifuge not only have an upgrade Omega in there, but they are soul surged, and I could definitely handle everything with that. All right, so that's it for what's going on down here. Now let's go up to the next level. Here is all of my storage, right? I have tons of netherite upgrades in here. Initially, I was staggering them every other because I was like, this is going to be enough. And then I realized that my mystical agriculture, had more of these than I could possibly fit. So this is where I'm keeping all of my high quantities of items. And then over here, oh gosh, look at all this stuff, man. Look at all this stuff. Did I pass the fluids? What am I doing? Here we go. So here's my fluid drawers. So I have a ton of essence. That's a lot, 101,000 buckets. This I won't need as soon as I get the infinite lava cell, but that requires the aloe ingots. I got all my honey being pumped into here. And one of the things I should have on here is a void upgrade, right? And so you're going to get a lot of honey from your bees. So just pump them into a fluid upgrade. If you want to keep the honey on hand, you can. Otherwise, it will just keep pushing it into here and voiding the excess. Here's my ether gas, got a lot of that. 275,000 buckets of pink slime, some liquid meat, and some latex. Again, should be fine for the whole playthrough. So that's what's going on this level. One level down here, and I'll skip the stairs because it's a little bit faster. This is where I have all of my Draconic stuff. And this is how I was able to build that orb very quickly. So this was kind of an experiment because I wanted to put a whole bunch of these hydroponic beds all around the outside of this. But then when I set this up, I realized that, and this might be controversial, but making all of your mystical agriculture seeds get processed in these hydroponic beds is not necessary at all. They are way, way, way too fast, especially when soul surge. So if I like turn this on, I'm missing power. Oh no, it's going to get power there. And if I turn this on, okay, this just makes this stuff too fast, and it's going to start ramping up the power. It'll catch up soon. And the water is what needs to catch up because the extended export buses have like a ramp up time. So this is going to keep getting faster and faster as the export bus recognizes that there's a continuous need for it. But yeah, I got 300,000 draconic ingots in like an hour. And so, yeah, if you do want to do this, hydroponic beds are definitely the way to go. This is what I was working towards, this ether gas, so that I could, use this method. But what I'll do is I'm going to take all this down. I'm not going to use it. And I've set up just 2 per side here of these hydroponic beds. I don't have them fully surrounded by the soul surge because I want to have the option to put a crux underneath there in case I need one of those blocks like magical soil or something like that for all the modium stuff. But yeah, I just have a couple on each layer, and what I plan to do is just whenever I need a resource a lot, quickly, I'm just gonna plug them in, turn them on, get the resource, and that'll be that. Yeah, this is ridiculous. I just need to turn these off. I don't need this anymore. Don't need that anymore. Over here in these 4 corners, this is where I have my warden is down there. He's getting milked up, and I have my little wither here, which I typically don't trust in these builds, but underneath of the stasis chamber is, my signature nitro generator. So the power will literally never run out to that. So I don't have to worry about this little guy escaping. So yeah, that's what's going on here. And got the same setup here. My thinking is I'm going to need a couple more of these withers. So I'll just put them in the other 2 corners. Still working on a theme for this, but here are my bees. So I went for draconic bees first, obviously, because you need the draconic chunks to make the speed upgrades. So I have productivity omegas already. And let me see. Yeah, I have 1,000 chunks. So not really in excess. But these things are very difficult to make. Yeah, I can't even make 20 of them. I can't make 10 of them. Jeez. Yeah, 8,000 honeycombs. These are huge crafts. Oh yeah, this is exactly the problem. I can't export all those combs. Okay, so there we go. We just answered my question right live on video. But anyways, yeah, push for Draconic, Celestial Gems. This is because I'm going for the Time Bees. Ancient Bees also useful for sure, but definitely going for those Time Bees. And then Eclipse Alloy, and then Skulk. All right, so I have everything I need, and then these all have the gene Pokey gene samplers because I need those genes so that I can make these spawn eggs. And as soon as I'm done with the spawn eggs, I probably don't need these ever again. Um, but yeah, here's a time one. This is a must, right? You should definitely work towards this. And I didn't work towards this as early as I should have, but the time one will save your life with bees, right? So even if you don't have a lot of upgrades in there, if you can push towards a little bit of time fluid, you are going to be able to produce those draconic chunks and really jumpstart bees very quickly. And speaking of breeding draconic bees, this was a useful thing here. This is going to create this dragon's breath. If you just put a dragon's head below an extractor, it just makes this for you. And this is what you need to use on these obsidian nests, right? In order to get the draconic bees. I forget why I needed that, some other bee. But yeah, this is my little setup here. As far as these time crystals go, um, I would not recommend, I don't think it's necessary at all to automate this. You can automate it within the Just Dire Things mod. You can have it, blocks being transported through each different dimension, and then you finally make it. I did this in the last playthrough, and I did it again, just manually bringing these things through with a cardboard box from dimension to dimension. You can slap some of these on them to make them, convert a little bit quicker. But you don't need a lot of these time crystals to get the time B. You basically just need 2 blocks of the time crystals and you're done. This is definitely not worth automating. All right, and that's pretty much going to wrap it up. What I'm going to work towards next is probably the Hephaestus Forge because that is a huge part of this pack. I'm going to be making multiple Hephaestus Forges because it's not fun to find out at the end of the pack that you need about 4 of them and they're really awful to make. So yeah, so I'm going to work on. I'm going to use the digital miner to get that stellarite ore, which is really, really hard to find. And then I'm going to make a stellarite B, so that's all set. And then I'm going to kind of, since I have all of my resource generation from, what's it called? Hostile neural networks. I got my mystical agriculture. Now I have bees. As I start needing things from each of these mods, I'm just going to work towards the bee. But I have most of the base bees already in my system. I'm going to make a subnet to store all my bees. Probably it's going to be better than the way I did it in the last episode. But yeah, here we are in the new Star Forge. There's a lot of kind of information, and we might spend a little bit more time in the actual, finalized build in the next episode. But this is just kind of the order I'm doing things in. I did say once, and I'll say it again, I'm a filthy min-maxer, so I'm going to push towards really, really, really advanced things as soon as they are available and not kind of slowly ramping up. It's just going to make the whole playthrough a lot easier. All right, so that's going to do it for this episode. Captain Jack out. We'll see you in the next video, and until then, stay poised.